New York is back at it again, and this new gun bill could make buying a firearm even harder than it already is. And the wild part is, most people will hear about it way too late after the rules are already moving through Albany. Quick question before we continue, are you subscribed? Because what I'm about to break down could save you from making a very expensive mistake. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this channel is all about keeping you ahead of gun law changes before they hit your wallet, your rights, or your future. So here's what just happened. New York lawmakers introduced Assembly Bill A360 in the 2025 to 2026 session. It was pre-filed on January 8, 2025, introduced by Assemblymember Jackson and sent to the Committee on Codes. That part matters because it tells you this is a proposal, not a law that already took effect. Let me say that again so nobody gets confused. This bill is not the law right now. It is a proposed bill. But it is still important because this is exactly how new restrictions start. First, they show up as a bill, then people ignore them. Then one day they wake up and realize the rules changed. Now, what does this bill actually do? In plain English, it tries to add more steps before someone can buy a firearm, shotgun, or rifle in New York. And when I read the bill, two parts jumped off the page fast. First, it adds language saying an applicant has to provide notarized proof of a past drug test by a licensed physician. Think about that for a second. Not just a test, not just a doctor, not just paperwork. It says notarized proof of a past drug test by a licensed physician. That means more time, more cost, more steps, and more chances for delay. Second, the bill is described as creating additional requirements to purchase a firearm, shotgun, or rifle. And the legislative summary says it requires a person to apply for a hunting license before the purchase. That is the kind of thing that makes people stop and say, wait, what? Why would somebody need to apply for a hunting license before buying a gun if their reason has nothing to do with hunting? Home defense is not hunting. Target shooting is not hunting. Collecting is not hunting. But that is exactly why bills like this get attention. They can force one purpose onto every buyer, even when that is not why the buyer wants the firearm in the first place. Here's the part nobody's talking about enough. This bill does not exist in a vacuum. New York already has layers of gun rules, permits, background checks, and location restrictions. So when you add one more requirement, it doesn't land on a blank page. It lands on top of an already heavy system. That means even a small change can feel huge in real life. Imagine you are a regular person in New York. You work all week, you save up your money, you want to buy a rifle for sport shooting or a shotgun for home protection or a firearm because you finally decided to exercise a right you've been putting off. Most people think the hard part is saving the money, but in a place like New York, the hard part can become the process itself. Forms, appointments, delays, fees, questions, more paperwork, and now maybe a doctor visit, a drug test, a notary, and even a hunting license application. That is why this matters, even if the bill never becomes law. Bills like this show you where some lawmakers want to go next. They are signals, they test ideas, they move the conversation. And once an idea gets introduced once, it has a habit of showing up again, sometimes in a different bill, sometimes buried in a larger package, and sometimes after being softened just enough to pass. Now, this is where it gets interesting. A lot of people hear introduce bill and tune out. Big mistake. Because if you wait until a bill is signed, your options are much smaller. At that point, you are no longer watching the storm. You are standing in the rain. If you're finding this helpful, imagine what you'll learn in my next video about the exact mistakes gun owners make when new state rules first drop. Subscribe so you don't miss it, because staying informed early is how you stay out of trouble later. Let me break this down even more. The hunting license part may sound minor at first, but it raises a bigger issue. A hunting license is tied to one activity, hunting, but gun ownership covers many lawful activities: self-defense, training, competition, collecting, ranch use, basic preparedness. So if the state says you need to apply for a hunting license before buying a firearm, shotgun, or rifle, that changes the relationship between the buyer and the government. It means your purchase path is now tied to a state-approved category, even if that category does not match your actual purpose. Here's a hypothetical example to explain this. Let's say you're a single mom in upstate New York. You don't hunt, you never plan to hunt. But after a break-in down the road, you decide you want a shotgun for home defense. Under the kind of change described in this bill, your path to that purchase could include applying for a hunting license first. Do you see the issue? The state would be making you walk through a hunting-related door to do something that has nothing to do with hunting. Now let's talk about the drug test language, because this is the part that shocked me. The bill text adds wording about notarized proof of a past drug test by a licensed physician. Most people get stuck on the drug test part, but the bigger picture is the process. Who pays for it? How recent does the test need to be? What counts as passed in every case? How long is it valid? What happens if doctors in your area are booked out for weeks? What if you work 2 jobs and can't keep making appointments? What if you live in a rural area and the nearest provider is far away? That is how real burdens happen. Not always through one dramatic ban, but through stacked requirements that turn a right into a maze. And here's what most people get wrong. They assume these extra steps only affect careless people. That is not true. The person most likely to get jammed up by complex rules is often the honest person trying to follow them. The criminal is not sitting around worrying about notary stamps and appointment calendars. The regular citizen is. This is why paying attention to bill language matters so much. One sentence in Albany can turn into weeks of hassle for someone just trying to stay legal, and even if a court challenge comes later, that does not help you much in the moment when you are stuck in the process. Now, quick legal note. This is educational information, not legal advice. Always consult an attorney for your specific situation. There's another reason this bill deserves attention. It shows the style of modern gun control. A lot of new proposals are not always direct confiscation bills. Instead, they work by adding conditions, certifications, training, waiting, reporting, storage rules, technology rules, or license-related steps. In other words, lawmakers often do not need to say, "You can't have this." They can say, "You can have it only after all these conditions." And for many people, that can feel almost the same. Most people think the debate is only about bans, but the truth is, process is power. If the process becomes hard enough, expensive enough, slow enough, or confusing enough, fewer people make it through. That may be the whole point. And don't miss this part. In 2026, New York also moved broader public safety legislation that included crimes related to using 3-dimensional printers for ghost guns and firearm components. I'm bringing that up for one reason only. It shows Albany is still very active on firearms policy. So when a new proposal like A360 appears, you should not shrug it off like random political noise. This is an area they keep working on. Hey, 73% of people watching right now aren't subscribed. Don't be part of that group. Join the gun owners and rights watchers who want these updates before they become tomorrow's problem. Click subscribe and stay one step ahead. Now let's talk about what you should actually take away from this if you live in New York, or even if you don't. First, understand the difference between a bill and a law. A 360 was introduced and referred to committee. That means it is part of the process, not the final result. Do not panic, but do not ignore it either. Second, start paying attention to words like eligibility, proof, application, and requirements. Those words sound boring, but they are where the real effect lives. A bill can sound small in a headline and still create big problems in daily life. Third, do not assume the impact stops at one state. What gets introduced in one place often inspires bills somewhere else. Lawmakers watch each other, advocacy groups watch each other, policy language spreads. So even if you live outside New York, this kind of bill can still matter to you as a preview. Fourth, never rely on social media clips alone. One short post can leave out the most important part, like whether something is just proposed, whether it passed one chamber, or whether it was signed. That is how people get scared for no reason, or worse, relaxed when they should be paying attention. Fifth, ask the right question. Not just, can this pass? Also ask, what does this tell me about where lawmakers are trying to go? Because even failed bills can come back later in a new form. Let me give you one more hypothetical example. Say you're a first-time buyer in New York. You finally decide this year is the year. You do your research, you follow the rules. Then halfway through your planning, lawmakers start pushing new purchase conditions. Suddenly the path changes. Now you're trying to figure out if you need new paperwork, another application, or a doctor visit you never planned for. That uncertainty alone can scare people off. And that is why staying updated matters so much. Confusion is not just annoying, confusion changes behavior. But wait, there's something even more important. Bills like this can also shape the public conversation. If lawmakers keep presenting gun ownership as something that should require more medical proof, more state approvals, and more extra filtering, that normalizes the idea that ordinary ownership should be treated like a special exception instead of a constitutional right. Whether you agree with that or not, you should at least recognize the direction of travel. So what should you do right now? Number 1, do not repeat rumors. Stick to what the bill actually says. Number 2, keep an eye on status changes. Committee movement matters. Number 3, if you are planning a purchase in New York, make sure you are checking current state and local rules from reliable sources before taking action. And number 4, if a proposal confuses you, get real legal help before you guess. Guessing around gun law is one of the dumbest risks a person can take. This information could literally matter more as these sessions move forward and laws can change fast. Subscribe now because the next video will break down how to track a gun bill before it turns into a rule that hits your everyday life. Here's the bottom line. New York's A360 is not a law yet, but it is a clear sign that more gun control ideas are still being pushed, and this one would add new purchase requirements like a hunting license application and notarized proof of a past drug test by a licensed physician. If you live in New York or care where gun laws are heading next, that should have your attention right now. So do yourself a favor. Subscribe, stay sharp, and don't wait until a headline becomes your personal problem. And one final reminder in simple terms, this video is for education only, not personal legal advice. If your rights, permit, or purchase plans are on the line, talk to a qualified attorney in your state.